Hi everybody and welcome back to your IBS Answer Portal. Today we're continuing with the T103 series. You're now on part 3, the gluten connection. This one's involved, fascinating, and I know you have questions and you want the answers. You read about it all the time, you see the products are growing all the time, and you hear so many people say, that's BS. That's not true. It's a fad diet. How many people really know it and understand it? Understand what gluten is. You heard about it. Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. There are a certain amount of people that have the condition called celiac disease. They are actually allergic to part of the wheat germ in flour. Gluten is a very large molecule. People who have celiac disease have an allergic reaction to it. Just like you could understand some children are severely allergic to peanuts. They can go into anaphylactic shock. In the case of people who have celiac disease, your own immune system reacts to that specific part of the wheat germ, and that ends up attacking the brush border of their small intestine. It destroys the lining of their small intestine. Remember those villi, those small little finger-like projections that come up and absorb your food? Well, children who have true celiac disease and continue eating the gluten that's in all the wheat products, wheat flour, they end up destroying the lining of their small intestine. Literally, children technically in severe celiac disease could actually die from malnutrition. Because of the damage done to their small intestine, they can't absorb the nutrients necessitating life functioning, and they can no longer get the necessary building blocks for life. So children technically could die if they have severe celiac disease and they continue eating gluten, wheat. That is true. However, medicine is starting to realize that people have varying degrees of gluten intolerance. So some people could react mildly to it, some people could react severely to it, but not necessarily testing positive for the markers, what they call IgA, IgD. I won't get into it, but there is a medical test, a blood test, that'll show if you present with celiac disease. Also, if they scope you and look at your brush border, they can see if these villi are blunted and they're flattened, and that is due to the reaction to wheat. So that's an extreme version of gluten intolerance. How did it come into being for the general population? Very, very interesting. More than 100 years ago, where did your ancestry ever hear about gluten? And you got to think about gluten. Gluten is a very large molecule, one that is hard for your digestive system to handle. We eat a lot of things that are hard to handle, but we do fine in small, limited quantities. Our life has changed in the last 100 years. So is gluten a fad, a misnomer? Not hardly. 100 years ago, you ask your grandmother how her grandmother baked bread. First of all, they didn't have quick rising flour. They didn't have white bleached out flour. This goes back to a long time ago when they started bleaching flour because it often went bad, sitting in mills waiting to be milled, and fungus got into it. So they would dry it and bleach it. And then they found out, well, when you bleach flour, you wipe out all the natural ingredients the minerals, the vitamins, and even the gluten. Without gluten, think of the word gluten. Glue, it glues it together. Well, without gluten, you're not going to get that chewy bread. You're not going to get the consistency of baked goods. So that's very important. Government said, well, if you bleach flour and you're trying to sell it as a food product, the so-called staff of life, and it doesn't have the nutrients, you're not really selling a healthy, wholesome food product. So they made the millers return those ingredients back to the flour after they bleached it. And they added gluten, they added vitamins, minerals, so on and so forth. As time went on, 30, 40 years ago, we got into a radical change in the food industry. We started adding gluten. There's one interesting thing about gluten. You can look this up. Gluten molecule can actually make you hungry. So the more you eat, the more you want to eat. If you think back 40 and 50 years ago, maybe you, the population out there, doesn't know it. But ask your parents and grandparents. What was it like to go food shopping? 50 years ago, we didn't have the supermarkets we have now. We didn't have the food manufacturers we have now. When your grandparents wanted to buy snacks, they were very little. There were mom and pop bakeries that also made cupcakes and cookies and maybe pretzels. You could get at a fair. You could get in a circus. You could get on a road stand. But they were small. They were made with natural ingredients. Today, you have multiple choices. Your grandparents or your parents had maybe a few brands of potato chips, a few brands of pretzels, a few brands of cookies. Not the case today. When you go shopping, think in a mall, walk down a specific store. Look how many choices you have of snacks, of pretzels, cookies, chips. I could go on and on and on. They add gluten to everything. And if you think this is not true, read the label of every ingredient of everything you pick up. It's gotten so bad that they add gluten to the medications you take. Yes, to the prescription drugs. Those capsules, those gelatin capsules, can have gluten in it because it's glue. It's gluing it together. Do you understand the problem? Anything in excess can be toxic or dangerous. We are radically changing our population. If you don't need glasses, you can clearly see. Look at our population. Go to a mall. Look at the size of people today. 1-2 generations ago, obesity hardly ever existed. Previous generation, type 2 diabetes in pediatrics in children didn't exist before 1992. A pediatrician did not see type 2 diabetes in children before the 90s. That's very, very important to understand. We are radically changing our physiques, our health. It has to do with all the excesses. So clearly understand, gluten is not a fad. It is not a misnomer. It's real. If you eat so much in excess, when your brush border is compromised and damaged, it's going to add insults to your brush border, add complications. So if you can, during the 6-week treatment phase of phase 1, if you can avoid gluten, you'll do yourself a world of good. If it's too tough on you, limit it as much as you can. It is a major problem. And if you have a compromised brush border or small intestinal lining, it presents a multitude of problems for you. So the answer is, it is not a fad, it is real, it is truthful, and try and reduce it. Another quickie thing you should understand is gluten intolerance and IBS issues rarely exist in the Asian population. Talk to someone who's just came from China, came from the Philippines, or other Asian countries. They don't have the issues we have. They don't eat the excess amount of complex sugars or FODMAPs. They don't eat gluten. They have rice-based diets. Really understand what we did to ourselves in this last 50 years. You will understand why you have the condition. Can't blame it on you. I blame it on the food industry that altered our foods. It secretly is making you hungrier, secretly making you have the problems you have. It is a real problem, and it is part of your treatment. So do your homework. It's your body. You got to live in it the rest of your life. You want to live happy and healthy. So think about it. It's all part of your treatment protocol. Coming up next, the next one is going to be on dairy. Is it a problem? And why should people with IBS be concerned about it or address it? It's going to be interesting. Stay tuned for the next video on dairy. Take care, and you are going to get better. Just follow what I'm teaching you.